The French election is going to be a mess. We are less than a year away from election day, and we still don't know who the main competitors are going to be. It seems clear that the right-winger Jordan Bardella will very likely be one of the two candidates going to the runoff election, and there seem to be a vast array of centrist candidates who may carry the fight against him, such as Attal or Philippe. However, there has to be a question. Where is the left in French politics? Well, time for me to introduce to you a guy called Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Now, let's go back to 2012. It is the presidential election, and Jean-Luc Mélenchon runs with his Left Front party on a clear leftist populist platform. He is the perhaps best performing populist leftist in that election, getting into the double digits of a vote. That's a pretty good run the first time around. So then, a whole bunch of stuff happened. Politics are politics, and Jean-Luc Mélenchon becomes the figure in charge of La France Insoumise. This is the 2017 election, and there is an incredibly tight race in the top four for who will move on to the next round. And if I'm going to be honest, everything was moving everywhere. It seemed it was going to be very close between Macron and Le Pen, and, maybe Fillon could get in there. We'd see how things happen. But then, out of nowhere came Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Maybe I shouldn't say out of nowhere. He was not far behind the centre-left Socialist Party. However, Mélenchon doubled down on the anti-establishment beliefs, and the Socialist Party simply fell behind him as the more left-wing base went over to La France Insoumise. So what happened on election day? Well, the polls ended up with the top four pretty much as expected, and Macron and Le Pen went on to the next round, and pretty much everyone coalesced around Macron, and Macron won. However, I think it does say something that Jean-Luc Mélenchon was only 2 points of getting into the next round. If it was Macron versus Mélenchon, I don't know what would have happened. Maybe a field would have coalesced around Macron. Maybe a lot of more conservatives would have stayed out of it. I still think, Macron probably would have won, but Jean-Luc Mélenchon could have won as well. However, it is clear that there are some left-leaning candidates, such as Philippe Poutou, Nathalie Arnault, who could have potentially thrown their support behind Mélenchon and maybe got him further. But, that's all theoretical at this point. Now let's go to the 2022 election. Now it seemed to be a four-way race. Macron, Le Pen, and Mélenchon is still there. Now let's look at the polls for the first vote. So it seemed to be Macron leading. Then as we get to election, things are a bit of a mess, but Le Pen picks up pace, then so does Mélenchon. Now going towards the election, it seemed pretty clear what was going to happen. Macron and Le Pen were going to be very close in the first vote. Mélenchon was going to be a bit further down than everyone else, and the field will generally coalesce behind Macron. Well, things didn't exactly go that way. Yes, those were the first, second, and third finishing positions, but Le Pen significantly underperformed opinion polls, and then Mélenchon, well, let's just say he overperformed them by quite a few percentages. As the results were finalised, it became clear that Mélenchon was less than 2% away from overtaking Marine Le Pen. So the question, I suppose, from there is, could Mélenchon have won against Macron in the second round? Again, I don't think he would have been the favourite, but I think he definitely could have done it. There's a lot of left-leaning candidates who also ran and got a fair chunk of the vote. Maybe if they weren't running or they didn't run as strong, Mélenchon could have got to a second round. And, you never know. It would have been interesting to see. But that's all academic. You know why? Because this is all happening again. Yes, Mélenchon, he is back! And he is polling decently well, getting into second place in some polls, tying for second place in some polls, actually holding second place in some polls, enough to get him into the second round. So, what is his pathway to victory? Because I'm going to scroll down to some potential second round polling. If we're looking at Mélenchon versus Bardella, whoa! It looks as if Mélenchon has no chance. Look at that. 68 to 32. Wow! Bardella should coast to victory, but no. We need to look at how fragmented the French political scene may be now. I see a scenario in which Bardella wins a first round vote, probably by a fair margin, but there's such a mess amongst other candidates. Mélenchon, with hopefully for him a strong base, a strong left-wing base, hopefully more unified than it has been last couple of elections, put him into second, while the centre-left and centre-right candidates all split each other's vote and can't quite catch him. So then we get to a second round. Well, Bardella does seem to be polling well. However, a lot of people in the centre will go to the left if it will stop Bardella. This can be seen like in 2024 when the centre and the left-wing blocs did form an agreement which would keep out the right-wing party during those elections. On top of that, it does always seem that that the right-wing bloc does underperform polls at elections, and Mélenchon has a habit of overperforming polls at elections. So, could Mélenchon beat Bardella? Yes, I could. I think it would be close. I'm not even going to say there's a favourite at that point out of those two, because I genuinely think it would be close. Could Mélenchon beat any of the more moderate candidates? Yeah, I mean, he could, but it would be very difficult. So, yeah, it's less than a year out, don't know how things are going to happen, but this is why we follow politics, don't we? Because we don't know what's going to happen. Alright, see you guys.